Anthony Dorman was 34 years old, and 2 weeks ago, he sat in a courtroom watching his wife's attorney paint him as the villain in their marriage, while she sat there with her hand on another man's knee. The same man she'd been sleeping with for the past 18 months while telling Anthony she was working late. The same man who was now funding her attempt to take everything Anthony had worked for since he was 19 years old. But what happened next changed everything. Anthony ran a small electrical contracting business in Portland, Oregon. Nothing fancy. 3 employees, maybe $200,000 in annual revenue if they had a good year. He drove a 7-year-old Ford F-150 with a dent in the passenger door that he kept meaning to fix. His wife, Rebecca, worked as an executive assistant at a tech startup downtown, pulling in about $65,000 a year. Together, they'd built a comfortable middle-class life. They had a modest 3-bedroom house in the Montevilla neighborhood, a mortgage they were actually ahead on, and a small savings account that Anthony had been contributing to religiously every month. Or at least he thought they'd built it together. The divorce hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Tuesday in late November 2024. Anthony arrived early, his stomach in knots, wearing the only suit he owned, the one he'd bought for his father's funeral 3 years ago. His attorney, David Park, a sharp family law specialist he could barely afford at $300 an hour, had prepared him for what to expect. Rebecca's lawyer would argue that she deserved half of everything, plus spousal support, despite the fact that she was the one who destroyed their marriage. "They're going to make you look bad," David had warned him the night before. "Her attorney is Jennifer Walsh. She's expensive, aggressive, and she doesn't play fair. Be prepared for anything." Anthony thought he was prepared. He wasn't. Rebecca walked into the courtroom like she owned it, wearing a designer dress Anthony had never seen before, probably purchased with money from her boyfriend, Derek Westwood. Derek was a 42-year-old venture capitalist with a penthouse in the Pearl District and more money than sense. He had the kind of smile that made Anthony want to punch something, all white teeth and condescension. Derek didn't come to the hearing. Apparently he had more important things to do, but his presence hung over everything like expensive cologne. What really twisted the knife was that Rebecca's mother, Patricia, was there. Patricia had always treated Anthony like he wasn't good enough for her daughter, even though Rebecca had been working at a coffee shop when they met, and Anthony was the one who'd encouraged her to go back to school and finish her degree. Patricia sat in the gallery with her arms crossed, her face set in that expression of permanent disappointment Anthony had come to know so well over the years. Jennifer Walsh stood up when the judge entered, smoothing down her immaculate black suit. She was exactly what David had described, mid-50s, silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, the kind of lawyer who probably charged $500 an hour and was worth every penny if you could afford her, which Rebecca apparently could now, thanks to Derek's bottomless wallet. "Your Honor," Jennifer began, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy, "my client has endured years of emotional neglect and financial control. Mr. Dorman may present himself as a hardworking small business owner, but the reality is far different. He has systematically isolated my client from her family, controlled the household finances to keep her dependent, and created an environment where she felt trapped and voiceless." Anthony felt his jaw drop. Every word was a lie, and yet Jennifer delivered it with such conviction that he wondered if the judge might actually believe it. "Furthermore," Jennifer continued, pulling out a folder thick with documents, "Mr. Dorman has been hiding assets. We have reason to believe there are business accounts he hasn't disclosed, equipment purchases made in cash, and a pattern of financial deception that goes back years." "That's not true," Anthony whispered to David. "I know," David whispered back. "Stay calm. We'll address it." The hearing dragged on for an hour. Jennifer presented bank statements, all legitimate, nothing hidden, but she twisted the context of every transaction. A $5,000 withdrawal Anthony had made to pay for a used work van? Jennifer claimed it was evidence of financial irresponsibility. The fact that Anthony paid himself a modest $45,000 salary while reinvesting the rest into the business? She painted it as him deliberately keeping Rebecca in poverty while hoarding wealth. Rebecca sat there through all of it, nodding along, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She was good, Anthony had to admit. She looked like the victim. Meanwhile, Anthony felt his blood pressure rising with every lie Jennifer told. Then, just as David was about to present their counter-arguments, Patricia stood up in the gallery. "Your Honor," she called out, her voice cutting through the courtroom, "I have something the court needs to see." Judge Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her early 60s with reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck, looked up with a frown. "Ma'am, you can't just—" "It's a video, Your Honor," Patricia said, already walking toward the front of the courtroom with her phone in her hand. "It's relevant to these proceedings, and it changes everything." Anthony felt confusion wash over him. A video? What video? Rebecca's face had gone pale. She grabbed Jennifer's arm, whispering something urgent. But Jennifer looked just as confused as everyone else. "Your Honor," Jennifer said, standing quickly, "I don't know what Mrs. Patterson is referring to, but this is highly irregular." "I agree," Judge Morrison said, but there was curiosity in her eyes now. "Mrs. Patterson, what exactly are you trying to show the court?" Patricia's hands were shaking slightly as she held up her phone. For the first time since Anthony had known her, 7 years of cold shoulders and backhanded compliments, she looked directly at him with something that might have been regret. "I have a video," Patricia said slowly, "that my daughter doesn't know I recorded. It's from 3 months ago at my house. It shows Rebecca and Derek Westwood discussing their plan to destroy Anthony in this divorce." The courtroom went silent. If you enjoy stories of sweet comebacks and shocking family secrets, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new stories here every day, each one more intense than the last one, and tell me in the comment where you are watching from. Rebecca shot to her feet. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done months ago," Patricia said quietly. She looked at the judge. "Your Honor, may I?" Judge Morrison studied Patricia for a long moment, then looked at Jennifer. "Counselor?" Jennifer looked like she'd been slapped. She glanced at Rebecca, who was shaking her head frantically, then back at the judge. "Your Honor, I would need to review this evidence before—" "I think we all need to see it," Judge Morrison said. She gestured to the bailiff. "Let's get that video on the courtroom display." Anthony watched in stunned silence as the bailiff took Patricia's phone and connected it to the courtroom's video system. The large screen on the wall flickered to life, showing what looked like Patricia's living room. The timestamp in the corner read August 15th, 2024, 7:43 p.m. The camera angle was from above, probably from a shelf or mounted security camera. In the frame, Rebecca sat on a cream-colored sofa next to Derek Westwood. They were both holding wine glasses, looking relaxed and comfortable. Derek had his arm around Rebecca's shoulders. "Are you sure this is going to work?" Rebecca's voice came through the speakers, tinny but clear. Derek laughed, the sound arrogant and dismissive. "Baby, trust me. I've been through 2 divorces. I know exactly how to play this game. We paint him as controlling, hide some of your income in my accounts, and make him look like he's been stashing money from the business. Walsh is expensive, but she's worth it. She'll destroy him." Anthony felt his chest tighten. He'd suspected they'd been planning something, but hearing it laid out so casually, so cruelly, made it real in a way he hadn't been prepared for. On the screen, Rebecca took a sip of her wine. "What about his business? Can we go after that?" "Absolutely," Derek said. "That's the beauty of it. Small business owners like him usually don't have the tightest bookkeeping. We'll claim he's been hiding income, taking cash under the table, all of that. Even if it's not true, the accusation alone will cost him time and money to defend against. He'll be so buried in legal fees and audits that he'll settle just to make it stop. And the house? You'll get the house," Derek assured her. "Walsh will argue that you need stability, that he can go rent some apartment somewhere. Once you have the house, we'll sell it, take the equity, and you'll move in with me. Clean break. New life." Rebecca leaned her head on Derek's shoulder. "I can't wait to be done with him. 7 years of pretending to care about his stupid business, his stupid truck, his stupid dreams. God, it'll be such a relief." In the courtroom, Anthony felt something crack inside his chest. The woman on that screen wasn't the person he'd married. Or maybe she was, and he'd just never seen it clearly. The video continued. Derek kissed the top of Rebecca's head. "Your mom doesn't suspect anything, right?" "No," Rebecca said, laughing. "She thinks I'm the victim in all this." She's always thought Anthony wasn't good enough for me anyway. She'll back up whatever story we tell. That's when Patricia's voice came through on the video, cold and clear. Is that what you think? On screen, Rebecca and Derek jumped, wine sloshing in their glasses. The camera angle didn't change. Patricia must have been standing in a doorway just out of frame. "Mom," Rebecca said, standing quickly, "I didn't hear you come home." "Obviously," Patricia said, and the disappointment in her voice was devastating. "I heard enough. More than enough." "Mom, wait, let me explain." The video cut off there. In the courtroom, nobody moved, nobody spoke. Anthony could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Judge Morrison removed her reading glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose. When she spoke, her voice was ice. "Mrs. Dorman, did you know your mother had recorded this conversation?" Rebecca had sunk back into her chair. She looked like she might be sick. "No, Your Honor." "Mr. Westwood isn't present today, but I assume your attorney has been operating under the strategy outlined in that video." Jennifer Walsh had gone very pale. "Your Honor, I was not aware of any plan to present false evidence. My client came to me with claims that I evaluated in good faith." "Save it, Counselor," Judge Morrison said. She turned to David. "Mr. Park, I assume you'd like to submit this video as evidence?" David was already on his feet, and Anthony could see he was fighting to keep the smile off his face. "Yes, Your Honor, absolutely." "So submitted," Judge Morrison said. She looked at Rebecca, and the disappointment on her face mirrored Patricia's in the video. "Mrs. Dorman, in my 20 years on the bench, I have seen many difficult divorces. I have seen people at their worst, fighting over money and property and pride. But I have rarely seen such a calculated attempt to defraud both the court and an innocent party." Rebecca was crying now, real tears, not the fake ones she'd been dabbing at earlier. "Your Honor, please." "I'm going to recess these proceedings for 30 minutes, Judge Morrison said, standing. "When we return, we're going to have a very different conversation about the division of assets and whether fraud charges should be filed. Mrs. Walsh, I suggest you have a serious discussion with your client about honesty and cooperation. This is not the way we practice law in my courtroom." The judge swept out, leaving chaos in her wake. Anthony sat frozen in his chair, watching Rebecca sob into her hands while Jennifer Walsh whispered urgently to her. Patricia stood near the front of the courtroom, clutching her purse, looking older than Anthony had ever seen her. David leaned over. "Anthony, do you understand what just happened?" Anthony nodded slowly. "She buried herself." "She didn't just bury herself," David said, and now he did smile. "She handed us everything on a silver platter. The house, the business, everything. And depending on what the judge decides, Rebecca could be facing fraud charges. I've never seen anything like this." Anthony finally turned to look at Patricia. She was watching him, and when their eyes met, she mouthed two words: "I'm sorry." He didn't know what to say to that. For 7 years, this woman had made him feel like he wasn't worthy of her daughter. Now she'd just proven that her daughter wasn't worthy of him. "Why?" Anthony called across the courtroom. Patricia walked over slowly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Jennifer tried to stop her from talking to Anthony, but Patricia waved her off. "I raised Rebecca to be better than this," Patricia said quietly. "When I heard that conversation, when I heard her laugh about using me to lie for her, I couldn't let it happen. I couldn't let her destroy a good man just because she decided she wanted a richer one." She paused, her eyes wet. "You deserve better than my daughter, Anthony. You always did. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it." Before Anthony could respond, the bailiff called everyone back to order. Judge Morrison had returned, and she didn't look any happier than she had before. "Let's make this simple," the judge said, sitting down heavily. "Mrs. Dorman, you have two options. Option 1, we proceed with a full hearing. I submit that video to the district attorney's office for fraud investigation, and you face both the divorce proceedings and potential criminal charges. Option 2, you agree right now to a settlement that Mr. Park and I will work out, which will be extremely favorable to Mr. Dorman, and we don't pursue criminal charges." Rebecca looked at Jennifer, who just shook her head tiredly. "Take option 2, the attorney whispered. "Option 2, Rebecca said, her voice barely audible. Smart choice, Judge Morrison said. Here's how this is going to work. Mr. Dorman keeps the house. He keeps his business, 100%, with no claims from you on current or future earnings. You get to keep your car and your personal belongings. The savings account gets split 60-40 in Mr. Dorman's favor because I'm feeling generous toward the person who didn't try to commit fraud in my courtroom. You will not receive spousal support. You will pay your own legal fees. Do you understand? Rebecca nodded, tears streaming down her face. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm putting a note in this file about the attempted fraud. If you or Mr. Westwood ever try to retaliate against Mr. Dorman or his business in any way, those fraud charges will be filed immediately. Are we clear? Yes, Your Honor, Rebecca whispered. Mr. Dorman, Judge Morrison said, turning to Anthony, do you accept these terms? Anthony looked at Rebecca, the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd built a life with, the woman who'd planned to destroy him for a man with a bigger bank account. He felt anger, yes, but also something like relief. He was free of this, free of her, free to start over. I accept, he said. Then we're done here, Judge Morrison said. She banged her gavel once. Divorce granted. Mr. Park, work with Mrs. Walsh to draw up the paperwork. I want it signed by end of business today. And just like that, it was over. Anthony walked out of the courtroom in a daze. David was talking excitedly about how everything had turned around, about how lucky they'd been, but Anthony barely heard him. He walked down the courthouse steps into the gray Portland drizzle, standing there for a moment just breathing. Patricia found him there. Anthony, she said. He turned to face her. Why did you really do it? She was quiet for a long moment, watching the rain. Because I saw what my ex-husband did to me in our divorce, she finally said. He lied, he cheated the system, and I had no proof. I lost almost everything. When I heard Rebecca planning to do the same thing to you, she shook her head. I couldn't be part of it. I couldn't let my daughter become the person who destroyed my life. Thank you, Anthony said, and he meant it. Patricia reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. This is my lawyer, the one who's helped me rebuild my life over the past 10 years. If you need anything, any advice on what comes next, call him. Tell him I sent you. Anthony took the card, studying it. I don't understand. You've hated me for 7 years. I didn't hate you, Patricia said softly. I resented you for not being the rich man I wanted for my daughter. I was wrong about what mattered. My daughter taught me that lesson, even if she didn't mean to. She buttoned up her coat against the rain. You're a good man, Anthony Dorman. Don't let this make you bitter. Don't let her poison what comes next for you. She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the parking garage. Anthony stood there for a while longer, letting the rain soak through his suit, thinking about everything that had changed in the span of 2 hours. His marriage was over. His wife had betrayed him in ways he was still processing. But somehow, impossibly, he'd walked out of that courtroom with everything he'd worked for still intact. They had no idea what was coming, but he was about to find out what came next. The week after the divorce hearing felt surreal. Anthony kept expecting to wake up and find out it had all been a dream. The video, Patricia's testimony, Rebecca's complete breakdown in court. But every morning he woke up in his house, his name still on the deed, his business still intact, and the weight of 7 years of marriage slowly lifting off his shoulders. David Park called him on Thursday morning. Anthony, we need to talk. There's been a development. Anthony was at a job site in Gresham, rewiring an old commercial building. He stepped outside into the parking lot, away from the noise of his crew working. What kind of development? Derek Westwood called my office this morning, David said, and Anthony could hear the mix of amusement and disbelief in his voice. Well, his attorney called. They want to settle. Settle what? I'm not suing him. Not yet, David said. But apparently, Derek's lawyer is concerned that you might. The video Patricia recorded includes him explicitly planning to defraud the court. He's worried about criminal exposure and, more importantly, reputation damage. If this gets out, and let's be honest, in today's world, everything gets out, it could damage his business relationships. Venture capitalists live and die by their reputation. Anthony leaned against his truck, processing. What kind of settlement are we talking about? He's offering $50,000 in exchange for your signature on an NDA. You agree not to discuss the video or his involvement in the divorce fraud, and he writes you a check. $50,000, Anthony repeated slowly. It's hush money, David said bluntly. And honestly, I think you should take it. You don't owe Derek Westwood anything, and if you can get paid for your silence, why not? Use the money to expand your business, take a vacation, whatever you want. Just take the win. Anthony thought about it. $50,000 would change things for him. He could hire another electrician, buy some new equipment, maybe finally get that certification he'd been putting off because of the cost. It wasn't about revenge, it was about moving forward. Set up the meeting, Anthony said. Let's do this. The meeting took place the following Tuesday at David's office, a small suite in a building off Burnside. Derek showed up with his attorney, a thin man in his 50s named Robert Dorman. No relation to Anthony, though the shared last name made the situation slightly awkward. Derek looked different than Anthony remembered from the brief glimpses he'd gotten of him before. The confidence was gone. He wore an expensive suit, probably worth more than Anthony's truck, but he looked tired, stressed. There were dark circles under his eyes. Mr. Dorman, Derek said stiffly as they sat down around David's conference table. Mr. Westwood, Anthony replied, keeping his voice neutral. Robert Dorman opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. My client is prepared to offer compensation in exchange for certain assurances regarding confidentiality. He began in that careful lawyer language that never quite said what it meant. Cut the corporate speak, David interrupted. Your client wants to pay my client to keep quiet about the fraud scheme. Let's just be honest about what this is. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Robert glanced at him, then nodded. Fine. Yes, Mr. Westwood is offering $50,000 in exchange for Mr. Dorman's agreement not to discuss the events surrounding the divorce proceedings, particularly the video evidence. I want 75, Anthony said suddenly. Everyone looked at him in surprise, including David. Derek's jaw tightened. That's not. Let me explain something to you, Anthony said, leaning forward. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. You tried to destroy my life. You and Rebecca planned to take my business, my house, everything I worked for since I was 19 years old. You were going to bury me in legal fees and false accusations just to make your life more convenient. $50,000 doesn't even cover what I've already paid in attorney's fees and lost work time. The original offer, Robert began. The original offer was insulting, Anthony interrupted. $75,000, or I walk out of here, call the district attorney's office myself, and let the chips fall where they may. I don't need your money, Mr. Westwood. I've got my house, my business, and my reputation intact. Can you say the same? Derek stared at him for a long moment. Anthony could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing the cost of another $25,000 against the cost of potential fraud charges and reputation damage. Fine, Derek said finally. 75. Robert looked like he wanted to argue, but Derek held up a hand. Just do it. Get the paperwork ready. It took an hour to review and sign all the documents. Anthony read every line carefully, asking questions when things weren't clear, making sure there were no hidden traps. David had already reviewed everything, but Anthony wanted to understand exactly what he was agreeing to. The NDA was straightforward. Anthony wouldn't discuss Derek's involvement in the divorce fraud with anyone outside of legal proceedings, wouldn't provide the video to media or social media, and wouldn't pursue civil action against Derek. In exchange, Derek would wire $75,000 to Anthony's business account within 5 business days. One more thing, Anthony said before signing. I want it in writing that this NDA doesn't prevent me from cooperating with law enforcement if they investigate this situation independently. I won't initiate anything, but if they come asking questions, I'm not going to lie for you. Robert and Derek exchanged glances. Agreed, Derek said quietly. They added the clause. Anthony signed. It was done. As Derek and his attorney packed up to leave, Derek paused at the door. For what it's worth, he said, not quite meeting Anthony's eyes, I didn't know you. Rebecca painted a picture of you as this controlling, difficult person. I should have asked more questions. You should have not tried to destroy someone's life for a woman you barely knew. Anthony replied. But I guess we all make mistakes. Derek flinched and left without another word. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you have not, because the ending of this story will blow your mind. And drop a comment below telling me what you think Anthony should do next. That evening, Anthony sat in his kitchen, in his house, with a beer and his laptop, thinking about what came next. The divorce was final. He had $75,000 coming. His business was secure. By all accounts, he'd won. So why did he still feel empty? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Patricia Patterson. I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I wanted to check on you. Anthony stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, It's fine. I'm okay. Thank you again for what you did. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Would you be open to meeting for coffee sometime? I'd like to explain some things, no pressure. Anthony almost said no. The idea of sitting down with his ex-mother-in-law felt bizarre, uncomfortable, but there was something in Patricia's tone, both in the courtroom and now, that suggested she had more to say, more he might need to hear. Sure, he typed. When? They met on Saturday afternoon at a small cafe in Selwood, far enough from Anthony's usual haunts that he didn't have to worry about running into anyone he knew. Patricia was already there when he arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. I ordered you a medium roast black, she said as he sat down. I remember that's how you take it. Good memory, Anthony said, genuinely surprised. Patricia smiled sadly. I paid more attention than you probably thought. I was paying attention to the wrong things. She wrapped her hands around her own cup, staring down into it. I need to tell you something about Rebecca, about how she grew up. Anthony settled back in his chair listening. Rebecca's father, my ex-husband, was a financial advisor, Patricia began. Successful, charming, the kind of man who could sell anything to anyone. He gave us a good life. Big house in Lake Oswego, nice cars, country club membership. Rebecca grew up thinking that was normal. That was what life was supposed to look like. Then the divorce happened, Anthony said quietly. Patricia nodded. Rebecca was 16. Her father left me for a younger woman. A client, of course. In the divorce, he hid assets, lied about his income, paid for expensive attorneys I couldn't match. By the time it was over, I got a tiny fraction of what I should have. We lost the house, the cars, everything. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Milwaukee, and Rebecca went from private school to public school overnight. That must have been hard for her. It destroyed something in her, Patricia said. She became obsessed with money, with security, with never being vulnerable again. When she met you, I thought maybe she changed. You were kind, hardworking, clearly devoted to her. But she was always looking for something more, someone richer, someone who could give her back what she lost. Anthony took a sip of his coffee, letting the bitterness wash over his tongue. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand that what Rebecca did to you wasn't really about you, Patricia said. It was about her own fear and damage. That doesn't excuse it. Nothing excuses trying to destroy an innocent person. But I thought you should know you didn't fail. You weren't insufficient. You were just caught in the blast radius of someone else's trauma. They sat in silence for a moment. I also wanted to tell you what happened after the hearing, Patricia continued. Rebecca moved in with Derek immediately. I went to help her pack. I'm still her mother, despite everything. And I saw how he treated her. Dismissive, annoyed that she'd messed up the divorce. She was crying, apologizing to him, and he was on his phone the whole time, barely acknowledging her. Sounds about right, Anthony said. They lasted 3 weeks, Patricia said. Derek broke up with her last Tuesday. Told her he couldn't be with someone who brought legal liability and drama into his life. She called me at midnight, hysterical. She's back in that apartment in Milwaukee now. The same one we moved to after her father left. Full circle. Anthony should have felt satisfaction at that. Some part of him did. But mostly he just felt sad. For Rebecca, for Patricia, for all the ways people damaged each other trying to avoid their own pain. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for her, Patricia said, as if reading his mind. I'm telling you because I want you to know that people who do what Rebecca did don't win in the end. The universe has a way of serving justice, even when the courts don't. The courts did pretty well this time, Anthony said with a slight smile. Patricia laughed, a real laugh. They did, didn't they? I'm still amazed I had the courage to show that video. I was so scared. What made you do it? Really? Patricia was quiet for a long moment, watching the other cafe patrons. The barista making espresso, the normal Saturday afternoon flow of life. When I heard Rebecca planning to use me as a witness to lie for her, I realized I'd failed as a mother. I'd raised someone who thought that was acceptable, who thought destroying a good person was fine as long as she got what she wanted. I couldn't let that be my legacy. You did the right thing, Anthony said. I hope so, Patricia replied. But it cost me my relationship with my daughter. She won't speak to me now. Says I betrayed her, chose you over her. I'm sorry. Don't be, Patricia said firmly. Some relationships are toxic, even family ones, especially family ones. I'm making peace with that. She pulled out her phone and showed Anthony a photo. I'm taking pottery classes now. Started last week. It's something I always wanted to do but never had time for when I was busy trying to maintain appearances and manage Rebecca's drama. Anthony looked at the photo, a lumpy, lopsided bowl that was clearly Patricia's first attempt. It's terrible, he said honestly. Patricia laughed again. It really is, but it's mine. I made it. That's something. She put the phone away. What about you? What's next for Anthony Dorman? He thought about the $75,000, about the business, about the empty house that was still full of memories. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I think that's okay. For the first time in years, I get to figure out what I want, not what someone else wants from me. That's a good place to start, Patricia said. They finished their coffee, talking about small things, Anthony's work, Patricia's pottery class, the Portland rain that seemed like it would never end. When they stood to leave, Patricia hesitated, then reached out and hugged him briefly. Thank you for meeting with me, she said. And Anthony, don't let what happened make you afraid to trust again. There are good people out there. You deserve to find them. Anthony drove home through the gray afternoon, Patricia's words echoing in his mind. When he got back to his house, he stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at everything with new eyes. The furniture he and Rebecca had picked out together, the photos on the walls, the accumulated debris of a life that no longer existed. It was time for a change. He spent the rest of the weekend cleaning, not just surface cleaning, deep cleaning. He took down the photos, packed away the things that reminded him too much of Rebecca, rearranged furniture. He repainted the bedroom a color he actually liked instead of the beige Rebecca had insisted on. He bought new sheets, new towels, new coffee mugs to replace the ones she'd taken. On Monday morning, the wire transfer from Derek cleared. $75,000 sitting in his business account like a surreal reminder that sometimes things actually worked out. Anthony called his accountant. I need advice on how to use some money wisely. Over the next 2 weeks, he made changes. He hired a new electrician, a young guy fresh out of trade school who reminded Anthony of himself at that age. Eager, hardworking, willing to learn. He bought a new work van, nothing fancy but reliable. He registered for that master electrician certification program he'd been putting off. He also did something unexpected. He donated $5,000 to a legal aid fund that helped people who couldn't afford divorce attorneys. He thought about Patricia, about how different her divorce might have been if she'd had better legal help, and he wanted to help someone else avoid that fate. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would have done in Anthony's situation. But the biggest change came one evening in mid-December when Anthony was finishing up a job at a small office building downtown. The client, a woman named Sarah who ran a nonprofit, brought him coffee while he was testing the new circuits. You do good work, Sarah said, watching him make notes on his tablet. Very thorough. Thanks, Anthony said. I like to make sure everything's done right the first time. That's rare these days, Sarah replied. She paused, then added, my friend owns a property management company. They oversee about 30 commercial buildings in the Portland area. They're looking for a reliable electrician for ongoing maintenance contracts. Would you be interested in me passing along your information? Anthony looked up, surprised. That would be, yes, absolutely. That would be amazing. Consider it done, Sarah said with a smile. You helped us out when our regular electrician ghosted us right before our big donor event. I don't forget things like that. The property management company called 3 days later. After one meeting and a competitive bid, Anthony signed a contract for ongoing electrical maintenance across 15 buildings. It was steady, reliable income, the kind of contract that would stabilize his business for years to come. This is what happens when you do good work and treat people right, David Park told him when Anthony called to share the news. The universe pays attention, even when it seems like it doesn't. Anthony wanted to believe that. He was starting to believe that. On Christmas Eve, Anthony drove to a tree lot and bought a small Douglas fir. He set it up in his living room, decorated it with new ornaments he'd picked out himself. No painful memories attached to any of it, just a tree, some lights, and the quiet satisfaction of starting over. His phone buzzed. Another text from Patricia. Merry Christmas, Anthony. I hope you're doing well. My pottery is getting slightly less terrible. He smiled and typed back, Merry Christmas. Send photos of the pottery. I need a good laugh. She sent a photo of a bowl that was still lumpy, but noticeably better than her first attempt. They exchanged a few more messages, easy and comfortable, before saying goodnight. Anthony sat in front of his tree, drinking hot chocolate and thinking about how much had changed in 6 weeks. He'd lost a wife but gained clarity. He'd been betrayed but come out stronger. He'd discovered that sometimes the universe really did deliver justice, usually when you least expected it. Tomorrow was Christmas Day, and for the first time in years, Anthony was spending it alone. But he wasn't lonely. He was free, and that made all the difference. 3 months after the divorce, Anthony received an unexpected email. The subject line read, Derek Westwood, legal matter requiring your attention. Anthony opened it with trepidation, wondering if Derek was trying to back out of their settlement or cause new problems. But the email wasn't from Derek's attorney. It was from a woman named Jennifer Rodriguez, who identified herself as an investigator with the Oregon Department of Justice. Mr. Dorman, the email read, we are conducting an investigation into financial improprieties at Westwood Capital Partners. Your name has come up in our preliminary research due to your connection to Derek Westwood through your divorce proceedings. We would like to speak with you at your earliest convenience. Please note that you are not under investigation and are not suspected of any wrongdoing. Anthony immediately forwarded the email to David Park and called him. Don't panic, David said after reading it. This actually might be good news for you. Remember, the NDA you signed with Derek allows you to cooperate with law enforcement if they initiate contact. You didn't violate anything by receiving this email. What do you think they were investigating? Anthony asked. If I had to guess, the video Patricia recorded probably raised some flags. Even though criminal charges weren't filed against Derek in your case, that doesn't mean the authorities weren't paying attention. Fraud in one area often indicates fraud in others. They're probably digging into his business practices. Anthony met with Jennifer Rodriguez and her partner, a federal agent named Michael Torres, the following week. They met at a neutral location, a conference room at a downtown hotel, and both investigators were professional, courteous, and careful to emphasize that Anthony was there voluntarily as a witness, not a suspect. Mr. Dorman, Jennifer began, opening a laptop and pulling up files. We've been investigating Derek Westwood for approximately 8 months now. The investigation began when one of his investors filed a complaint about misrepresented returns on their investment. As we dug deeper, we found a pattern of financial manipulation, false reporting, and potential fraud spanning several years. Michael leaned forward. Your divorce case caught our attention because the behavior Derek exhibited, the planning, the coordination with your ex-wife to present false financial information, that's consistent with his pattern in business dealings. We think he's been doing similar things with his investors and business partners. What do you need from me? Anthony asked. We need the original video that Patricia Patterson recorded, Jennifer said. We understand you have an NDA with Mr. Westwood, but as we explained, that NDA specifically allows for cooperation with law enforcement. We also need your testimony about the divorce proceedings and Derek's involvement in the attempted fraud. Anthony didn't hesitate. I'll give you whatever you need. They spent 3 hours going through everything. The video, the divorce proceedings, Derek's behavior, the settlement, and NDA. Anthony showed them copies of all the legal documents, explained the timeline, and answered every question thoroughly. When they finished, Michael sat back with a satisfied expression. Mr. Dorman, you've been very helpful. This corroborates a lot of what we've been finding. Derek Westwood has been running what amounts to a sophisticated con for years, and people like you are the collateral damage. What happens now? Anthony asked. Now we continue building our case, Jennifer said. It'll take time. Probably another 6 to 9 months before we're ready to file charges. But when we do, it's going to be significant. We're talking about multiple counts of fraud, securities violations, and potentially tax evasion. Derek Westwood is going to face serious consequences. Good, Anthony said simply. As Anthony was leaving, Jennifer called him back. Mr. Dorman, I just want to say, I've seen a lot of victims of financial fraud in my career. Most of them don't come out of it as well as you did. You should be proud of how you handled this situation. I had help, Anthony said, thinking of Patricia in her video. A lot of help. Over the next several months, Anthony threw himself into his work. The contract with the property management company was everything Sarah had promised. Steady, reliable work that let him plan for the future. He hired another electrician in March, a woman named Lisa, who had 15 years of experience and was tired of working for a larger company that didn't value her expertise. I like your operation, Lisa told him during her interview. Small, focused, quality-oriented, that's how I want to work. That's how we do things here, Anthony said, and hired her on the spot. His business grew. Word of mouth from satisfied clients brought in new customers. The $5,000 donation to the legal aid fund turned into an unexpected networking opportunity when he was invited to a fundraising event and met several business owners who needed electrical work. By June, Anthony's annual revenue had increased to nearly $300,000, and he was on track to break $400,000 by year's end. He paid himself a proper salary for the first time, $65,000 a year, the same amount Rebecca had been making. It felt like justice in a small, satisfying way. But the real change was in how Anthony felt about his life. He'd started seeing a therapist in February, working through the betrayal and trust issues from his marriage. He joined a recreational soccer league to meet new people and get exercise. He'd even started dating again. Nothing serious yet. Just coffee and dinner with different people, learning how to be open to connection without losing himself. One Saturday in late June, Patricia texted him, "Are you free for coffee? I have news." They met at the same cafe in Selwood, and Anthony immediately noticed that Patricia looked different. Lighter somehow. She was wearing more casual clothes than he was used to seeing her in, and her hair was shorter, modern. "You look good," Anthony said honestly. "I feel good," Patricia replied. She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. "Look what I made." It was a ceramic vase, actually well made, with clean lines and a beautiful blue glaze. "Patricia, that's amazing," Anthony said, genuinely impressed. "I've been taking classes twice a week," she said proudly. "I'm actually getting decent at it. My instructor thinks I could sell some pieces at the local arts market." She put the phone away. "But that's not the news I wanted to share. I heard from Rebecca." Anthony felt his stomach tighten. "Oh?" "She called me last week," Patricia said. "First time in 6 months. She wanted money, of course. She's apparently struggling to find work because word got around about the divorce scandal. But she also—" Patricia paused, choosing her words carefully. "She also apologized. To me, anyway. For using me. For lying. For everything. She said she's been in therapy and is trying to make amends." "Do you believe her?" Anthony asked. Patricia considered. "I think she's sorry she got caught and is facing consequences. I don't know if she's truly sorry for what she did. But it's a start, I suppose." She looked at Anthony. "She asked about you. Wanted to know how you were doing." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you were doing well, that your business was thriving, and that she didn't deserve to know more than that," Patricia said firmly. "I'm her mother, but I'm not going to help her weasel back into your life or make you feel guilty for moving on." "Thank you," Anthony said. "There's something else," Patricia continued. Rebecca told me that Derek Westwood was arrested last week. It was in the news, but I wasn't sure if you'd seen it. Anthony had seen it. The headline had read, Portland venture capitalist charged with multiple counts of fraud. The article detailed how Derek had been running a scheme where he misrepresented investment returns, used new investor money to pay returns to existing investors, essentially a Ponzi scheme, and had defrauded investors out of approximately $8 million over 5 years. I saw, Anthony said. Jennifer Rodriguez called me, the investigator. She said my testimony and the video were crucial parts of their case. Derek's trial is scheduled for next year. How do you feel about that? Patricia asked. Anthony thought about it. Honestly, I feel like the system worked. Not perfectly, it never does, but it worked. Derek is facing real consequences. Rebecca lost everything she thought she was gaining, and I'm here, running a successful business, living my life. He smiled. I feel like I won. You did win, Patricia said, and you did it with integrity, which is worth more than anything. They talked for another hour, catching up on life, sharing small victories and challenges. When they parted ways, Patricia hugged him again, and it felt natural now, comfortable. I'm proud of you, Anthony, she said. I know I don't have the right to say that, but I am. You have the right, Anthony told her. You saved my life in that courtroom. You'll always have the right. In September, Anthony did something he'd been thinking about for months. He bought a small office space in Southeast Portland. Nothing fancy, just a converted garage with room for a proper workshop, a small office for paperwork, and a break room for his crew. It was the first real expansion of his business, a sign that he was building something permanent. Lisa helped him set up the space, and they had a small opening party with the crew and some of their regular clients. Sarah from the nonprofit brought champagne. Patricia brought a ceramic bowl she'd made specially for the occasion. To new beginnings, Patricia said, raising her glass. To justice, Sarah added. To good people who do the right thing, Anthony said, and they all drank to that. That night, Anthony sat in his new office alone, looking at the business license on the wall. Dorman Electrical Services, established 2019. He'd started this business with nothing but a truck, some tools, and determination. He'd built it while married to someone who apparently never valued it, and now, after everything, it was thriving. His phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Rodriguez. Trial date confirmed for Derek Westwood, March 15th. We'll need you to testify. Block out 2-3 days. Thanks again for your cooperation. Anthony replied, I'll be there. He was ready, more than ready. He wanted to look Derek Westwood in the eye and tell the truth about what Derek had tried to do to him. Not for revenge. The system would handle that. But for closure, for the record, for every other person Derek had hurt who didn't have a Patricia in their life to save them. The weeks leading up to Christmas were busy with year-end contracts and final jobs. Anthony found himself working alongside his crew more than managing from the office, and he loved it. There was something satisfying about the physical work, about solving problems with his hands, about seeing immediate results from his efforts. On Christmas Eve, Anthony had his crew over for dinner at his house. Lisa, the 2 other electricians, and their families. It was loud, chaotic, full of laughter and kids running around. It was nothing like the quiet, tense Christmases he'd spent with Rebecca, trying to live up to her expectations. This was better. This was real. After everyone left, Anthony sat alone with the lights on his tree, thinking about the past year. He'd gone from sitting in a courtroom facing financial ruin to sitting in his own house, his own business thriving, surrounded by people he actually liked and trusted. His phone rang. Patricia. Merry Christmas, she said when he answered. Merry Christmas, Anthony replied. How are you? I'm good. Great, actually. I wanted to tell you, I've been seeing someone. A man I met in my pottery class. His name is Richard. He's a retired teacher. And he's kind. Really kind. The way you were to Rebecca, even when she didn't deserve it. I'm happy for you, Patricia, Anthony said, and meant it. I learned from watching you, Patricia said quietly. I learned that kindness isn't weakness, that doing the right thing matters, even when it's hard, that real strength is in integrity, not in winning at all costs. She paused. You taught me that, Anthony, even though I was supposed to be the older, wiser one. Thank you. Anthony felt his throat tighten with emotion. You saved my life in that courtroom, Patricia. I think we're even. Maybe we are, she said with a laugh. Merry Christmas, Anthony Dorman. Here's to better years ahead. To better years, Anthony agreed. After he hung up, Anthony sat in the quiet for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the shocking revelation in the courtroom, the slow rebuilding of his life. It had been the worst year of his life and somehow also one of the best, because it had stripped away everything false and left only what was real. He thought about Rebecca, struggling now with the consequences of her choices. He thought about Derek, facing prison time for his fraud. He thought about Patricia, finding new life in pottery and a kind man who valued her. He thought about himself, building something meaningful with his own hands and his own integrity. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's letting people face the consequences of their own actions while you build a better life for yourself. Anthony had learned that he couldn't control what other people did to him. Rebecca's betrayal, Derek's scheme, the lies and manipulation, none of that had been in his power to prevent. But he could control how he responded. He could choose integrity over bitterness. He could choose to keep building instead of destroying. He could choose to let the system work instead of taking matters into his own hands. And in the end, that choice had made all the difference. The consequences for Rebecca and Derek weren't about him getting revenge. They were natural results of their own actions. Rebecca had lost her marriage, her mother's trust, her financial security, and her reputation because she chose to lie and cheat. Derek was facing prison because he chose to defraud people for years. Patricia's video hadn't created those consequences. It had simply revealed the truth that was already there. Anthony stood up, walking to the window to look out at his quiet street. Somewhere out there, Derek Westwood was probably with expensive lawyers, trying to figure out how to avoid prison. Rebecca was probably in that small apartment, wondering how her perfect plan had gone so wrong. But Anthony was here, in his own house, with his thriving business and his clear conscience. He'd won not by destroying them, but by refusing to let them destroy him. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.